How we'll launch our coaching. Our first meeting together will be different than any other meeting that we do. It will start with the TAIS. The TAIS. The TAIS is a performance profile of your performance-relevant strengths and your weaknesses. Let me tell you a little bit about TAIS. I'm very proud to be certified to distribute and to interpret this powerful inventory. The TAIS was originated by Dr. Robert Nidefer. Dr. Nidefer is one of the top 10 sports psychologists in the world. He lectures throughout the world, in Geneva, to Olympic training centers throughout the world, to Japan, China. His largest client is General Motors. The TAIS was invented in 1974, originally for Olympic athletic performance. Countries like Russia, the United States, and Britain were pretty much playing at the same level. And so psychological factors were becoming more determinant in the Olympic Games. So Dr. Nidefer put together a model that was compelling. And the significance of the TAIS inventory, and the reason that it surpasses other inventories like it, is that it measures attention. And according to the theory of human performance, the theory of performance says that attention has a definite relationship with stress when it comes to performance. And stress is a reaction that we have to danger. We have a mechanism in our body called the fight or flight. It's in our brain, called the fight or flight mechanism. And back when we were facing a saber-toothed tiger, we would either fight, put up our dukes, do something, or we would run our butts off back to the cave. And so stress would release a hormone in the body, adrenaline, which would physiologically prepare us for attack. And so our sweat glands would react, our breathing would become different, we would become dry in the throat, our palms would sweat, we would have bodily reactions, but we would also have psychological reactions. We could flood, we could brace, the pressure's too strong, we can't think of alternatives, we get tunnel vision, we get so focused on one thing that we don't look at what really needs to be done. We get paralyzed by all the analysis that we do in our mind. And so Dr. Nidefer created a model out of this and a performance inventory. And I'm one of several hundred people that walk the earth that can distribute this powerful inventory. And so our first meeting is going to be about reviewing your profile. Now, you're not going to walk out of the meeting improving performance. What you will walk out of the meeting with is an increase in your awareness. You see, one of the concepts that I want to teach you is that your awareness controls the quality of your choices. You're making choices whether you're aware of it or not. The more aware you are of how you tend to do things and how situations tend to affect you, the more you'll be able to use your awareness and consciousness to make choices in favor of an end result instead of in reversal or counteractive or short-circuiting an end result to happen. Now, the TAIS is based on 4 different ways in which we tend to pay attention. Actually, there's 3. So I'd like to enlighten you on these 3 different ways so that you're equipped to make sense of your TAIS scores and you can put it to use in your life. All information is useless unless it's applied. The theory of human performance says that we pay attention much like channels of a television. If you're familiar with Nielsen rating service, a company takes a box, a recorded box, that tracks what programs the average consumer is watching at a certain hour. For example, whether you're watching Home Improvement or X-Files. The president of Coca-Cola or the marketing director calls Nielsen and says, we're looking for an audience. This is the demographic. Where do we find them? And they say, well, they're all watching X-Files at 11 a.m. in the morning or 11 p.m. at night, whether they're prime time or syndication. The Nielsen rating service would minimize the risk for the advertiser and help them reach their target market. How does this tie in to the model we just talked about? How does this tie into the psychological piece here with TAIS? Well, similar to the Nielsen rating service, your mind switches channels. You cannot watch all channels at one time. Nielsen could only track which individual channel you were focusing on. What are the channels of the mind? Channel 1 we call awareness. Awareness. Signifying, I know what's going on. I know what's going on. We use this channel of awareness to detect moods, to see what's going on from afar. If we're in sport, it's our court sense. In basketball, it's what we use on a 3-on-2 fast break. In sprinting, it's knowing what's around us. If I'm a blocker on a football team, I have court sense as to where the other players are, so I can move in the right directions. It is our external sense, and it is a broad external focus, like wide angle instead of zoom on the lens. We focus outwardly. I know what's going on. Channel number 2 we tend to tune into is analysis. This is signified by I figure things out and I have lots of ideas and I generate solutions from a broad range of problems. I synthesize. This is your ability to predict outcomes, to analyze what might happen. This is to put things together, to see the long-range plan in contrast to where you are, and to make adjustments. This is preparation. This is thinking things through, reflection. Instead of being broad external, now our concentration goes internal. Still wide angle, but it's big picture, but it's internal, not external. Awareness is external, outside. Analysis is inside the mind. Channel 3 is called action. This is where we have to narrow our focus like a zoom lens, and instead of looking at things plurally or multifaceted, being aware of a broad range of things, we really hone in on one thing. For example, a goal or a target, or Shaquille O'Neal at the free throw line focusing on the basket. Not only is this narrowing in our mind, but action has to do with just what the word says, getting things done. Execution. Execution is the broad side of action. The narrow side of action is a detail, memory, recording in the mind, remembering a goal. Chris Evert did this. Martina Navratilova beat her 18 times, but Chrissy kept the goal in mind to beat her. And if you know how the story goes, after that, Martina didn't have much room. Chrissy Evert came back and beat her again and again and again, and she kept her narrow focus on staying steady to her goal. She made lots of sacrifices to get there. 18 losses is pretty easy to give up on. Action, follow through, and execution. Channel 3. Now sometimes, because of the changing demands of our performance situation, we have to switch channels to deal with the performance situation. If I need to get something done, then I need to be focusing that way. But what happens when I'm in the wrong channel? What happens when I am in awareness, yet the situation calls upon me to be acting, to be focusing, to be executing? Or I'm in my mind, and yet a decision is calling upon me to act on it. We all have a preferred way of paying attention, either through our years, our development. I don't know why, I just know we do. I've done hundreds of these profiles, and what I've found is that we prefer one channel over another, and it makes us unique, and it is a strength. But under pressure, it becomes our greatest liability. In fact, we over-rely on this channel to our detriment. Let me give you some examples of where this happens. And first, before I do that, let me tell you why it happens. Stress. One, the importance of the situation goes up. You're in front of your biggest client, potential client. You're going to behave in a different way. You're going to watch your step. You may not be as fluid as you normally were because you know the importance of the outcome and the loss of missing it could be great. Or it's your confidence. You're not confident. You feel unsteady. You don't feel you really have it down. You don't know what you're doing. You're not comfortable with how you do it. Or you're outside your comfort zone. You're outside your normal personality tendencies. It's just not comfortable to you. Your stress will go up. When your stress goes up, this affects your attentional processes, and you become inflexible. Now, these channels can become noisy when this happens. For example, if I tend to favor awareness, The downside of staying too long in that channel because of pressure, I over-rely on it, and what I can do is I react to way too many things all at once. Or if my attentional preference is awareness and I'm in front of a group speaking, suddenly somebody says something and I get so lost in the mood that I don't stick to my agenda. I don't follow through on the detail. I find myself an hour later only talking about a bunch of low essential stuff, and I didn't get to the essentials that I needed to complete the presentation. I lost the business. Or let's say that analysis. I tend to be very analytical, and so I've got a critical decision to make. And so I delay and delay. I get paralysis by analysis. I overthink things. I overheat my mind. I just put everything on hold because I can't figure out an answer. And I analyze something way too much. I'm a police officer in the police force. I'm in a high-speed chase. The assailant bolts from his car. He's running down an alleyway. Now get this. My preferred way of paying attention is analytical. No one's really made me aware of it. Now I'm chasing this person through yards, people's houses. I see on the assailant that he's carrying a pistol. I'm really feeling stressed. I feel that arousal coming on. Suddenly, a few seconds later, I lose sight of the assailant. I don't know where he is. Suddenly, I go into my mind. Because I'm so analytical, I think about what I learned in my training. I began to become doubtful about what I could do because I'm relatively new and I didn't want my partner to report that I was doing something wrong. I worried about what might happen to the citizen that was inside the house or the backyard I was in. Was I really doing the appropriate things? I thought about past police mistakes. And then pop. I got lost in thought, and the guy that he was with, I didn't even realize he was with an associate, popped me. Now, that is a real life situation that has happened to police officers, and I use it as a metaphor. I realize that you're not a police officer, and we're talking about business, but it's a useful metaphor to bridge a reality gap so you understand how psychological forces can affect the outcome, and how the dominant way in which we pay attention can really work in reverse and short-circuit us from doing the needed things we need to do to come out on the winning side. On the analytical side, some things that can cause us to become internally distracted and to focus too inward in our mind is we daydream too much, or we get negative thinking or self-doubt, or we get paralysis by analysis. We'll be figuring out which one you fall prey to most often and what to do about it. If your preference is awareness, and this is what becomes your liability, one is you get so focused on anger and frustration that becomes consuming to you, or you get very, very bored, or you get overwhelmed and you get rushed, and that distracts you. Let's talk about action. Action. What would happen if I'm so overly focused? I would get tunnel vision. If I over-rely on that channel, I would focus on so much, so precisely, like a sniper rifle, that I don't even see what's going on. Let's say I'm in a sales environment, and I go in there narrow-focused on my sales methodology and process. I don't miss a beat. But I don't pay attention to the prospect's eye movements and their body language and all the subtle things I'm going to need to modify in my presentation and output to align better with the buyer. I ask for the order, and he declines. My body language becomes more pushy, and I'm consistently pushing the buyer back on the hoofs of his feet. He doesn't want to buy. Suddenly, I've lost the sale. He doesn't respect me, and he wants me to leave. This has turned into a disaster. So if I am action, analysis, or aware, these can become liabilities. We all use these channels to varying degrees, but we just have a preferred channel that gets us in trouble. Knowing this information about yourself will help you predict the kind of people, situations, and levels of stress and how to respond to that so that you're able to manage yourself and come out on the winning side. You will be able to modify your performance. At the same time, you'll be learning more about your comfort zones, your personality traits. As I said, they become a source of stress when situations cause us to operate outside of them. For example, if I prefer being in control and I like to get my way, and I feel that the card that's being played to me is I am not in control, for example, delegation, I may resist. Yet I know that dividing the turf up in my business is sine qua non, absolute necessity. But what I do is I pull back. I hold on to stuff. I teach my team that I'm the only one. I disempower them. I wonder why they have lost my confidence, but I've never really tried them out. I'm stuck in my land of fear. I can't move forward in my business. I'm up against a huge restraint, and all it is inside myself. Or I tend to make decisions accurately. Suddenly, somebody feels haste makes waste in my team. They need to make a decision now or they're going to lose an opportunity. I want to put everything on hold and make sure all my T's and I's are crossed so that I don't make a mistake. It turns into a big feud. My stress goes way up. You see, when our stress goes up, we become inflexible, not only attentionally, but we become inflexible personally. We become inflexible with our interpersonal characteristics, our personality traits, our comfort zones. They're all synonymous. When this inflexibility happens, it can take us away from hitting our desired outcome. So by being aware of what stresses us, we can begin to foresee some very predictable outcomes. We can see how it affects our attentional processes. We can see how our comfort zones will be challenged. If I'm extroverted, for example, and I like to talk, maybe I tend to hog the spotlight under pressure, and I say way too much and give way too much information, and I don't listen well. Or I'm so expressive, I call people on their shots, I cut to the chase, I'm so critical, I was so hard on somebody, I assumed it wouldn't linger, but there's resentments lingering around the office, and I don't even notice it. So there are all sorts of mistakes that you might tend to make. It'll also help me, the coach, understand better the reality of who you are and what we need to be true to. It's not about fixing your weaknesses, it's about managing them. I'm here to help you emphasize your strengths and focus those strengths in a way to where your weaknesses will be overwhelmed. They won't even be counted. I remember an interview on the television back in the Olympics. I think it was 8 years ago. It was the Summer Olympics, and the Chinese ping pong team had completely demolished every other country. And the broadcaster came up to the head coach and said, your number one flagship player, your A player, was so unbelievable. How did he do it? And he said, well, in practice, all we did was we focused on the forehand. And the commentator said, well, why would you do that? His backhand is where he's weak. He said, no, we made his forehand so unbelievable. If no one could return it, why would we need the backhand? And that was the strengths theory, and it applies here, is that if you're so strong on the tennis court at serving and no one can return your ball, why are you going to go work on your net volley? There are certain things that you will do, and if we can put a system around you and focus them in such a way where the benefits totally outweigh the cost of your weaknesses, I think we're thinking smarter. And if we can put a group of people around you that will support you, compliment you, and help you deliver a superb performance without all the struggle, I think we've got a great formula. So we're going to leap off with the TAIS. You're going to be provided several reports, a sales report, a business report, and an athlete's mental edge report. I'd like you to go through each one. The sales and business report are going to look very similar, but if you look between the lines, there'll be a paragraph or two that's just only related to sales performance. It's the same shell. We use the same psychometrics, from awareness to action to analysis to information processing to speed of decision making to your control to self-critical. You'll see a lot of the same categories, but if you look in detail, you'll be provided some great input about how you tend to behave in the sales environment and what you might do about it strategically. The Athlete's Mental Edge Report I include for a specific reason. The Athlete's Mental Edge Report is so that you get a glimpse of how you'd perform athletically. It's not only great to see this, but it's also articulated by another author who works with Dr. Nidifer, who handles more of the sports side of our TAIS EPS system. Pay specific attention to the error analysis in this report. There are two particular areas that above all else you tend to make errors. Print these. Read them in detail. Go through your TAIS report and look for the little red bullets underneath every category. Even in your sales report and business report, look at those red bullets in there about suggestions. Take the top 5 that resonate with you, the ones that you feel would give you immediate leverage and relief, that would really add some value to you, and bring that to your coaching session. including any other questions that you have about the answers. You'll probably find that it's 80% accurate. There will be some things that won't be accurate in there. We'll be validating that and tying those scores into your situation. It's also helpful to have others around you read your TAIS to see if they feel that certain traits are valid. So if your spouse would like to read it, or a coworker, partner, boss, it might be helpful to do that. Your TAIS will be kept confidential. It will not be shared with anybody else. At the same time, you may want to take these performance targets, these areas in the red bullets, and call a meeting with people around you who support you and work with you to disclose what you've realized and what you're going to be working on. Not that you're going to be fixing something bad with you, but what are the areas that you're going to be looking to improve? There are 3 options in your performance improvement process related to TAIS. The first is to change your environment. The second is to change on a team level. And third is personal change. I like to put personal change as the last option. It might seem awkward to you in a coaching program that I would put personal change as the last option. Let me tell you why. I look at cost and leverage. Personal change, high cost. Immediate leverage, not at all. There's a delay. There's a delay to acclimate yourself and internalize a habit. Environment. Simply, if it means keeping your door closed, you don't change anything about yourself. You just keep your door closed. You're free of distractions. Leverage, immediate. Cost, low. Team. You team up with someone else that can share the weakness, the responsibility, the soft spot. So your thinking could be, in finding performance solutions, environment, no personal change. Team, no personal change. Or 3, changing of my personal habits. Leverage and cost. Leopards don't change their spots. My last comment to you is, if you took the TAIS again in 6 to 12 months, the only thing that would really change would be your attentional profile. Reducing distractions. Your internal distractibility and your external distractibility and your reduced flexibility, these things would change. So you would see a reduction in those. There are remedies to reduce distractions. Everything below that, below those scores, below reduced flexibility, if you pull out your basic scale report, all of that is going to stay the same. It is who you are. This is not a program about changing who you are. This is a program about creating what you want. If you change as a byproduct of that, that's a great outcome. But this will not be about changing you in lieu of what's wrong with you. So it is about being aware, but staying true to your traits and making good decisions with those traits.